Thank you, Ken Corla. Taoiseach, I want to raise a very difficult issue with you this morning, and it relates to the overuse and, in some cases, addiction to over-the-counter medication, in particular those medications that contain codeine. Now, the context in which I am raising this is because of the death of a young 39-year-old woman at Sligo University Hospital just over 2 weeks ago, and that happened because of her addiction to over-the-counter opioid-containing medication. Her name was Laura Newell, and her sad and untimely death has been reported in many newspapers. However, the reason I'm raising it with you is that her sister, whom I know, wrote to me and indeed all the public reps in Sligo Leitrim and asked us to raise the issue of dependency and addiction to over-the-counter painkillers in Ireland. Now, she specifically says, "I await your response in the hope that my family can rely on you to raise these concerns at the highest level." And she goes on to say, "My hope would be that legislation could be put in place that will remove the medicine from behind the counter and be available only through consultation with the GP." It's a long email and it's heartbreaking because it tells how a 39-year-old woman died painfully from addiction. Her sister names the over-the-counter medication, but I won't here, but it is a household name. Now, there's nothing extraordinary in Laura Newell's sad story, but her addiction started as a response to the need for pain medication due to undiagnosed endometriosis. And in order to try and deal with her pain, she'd started taking over-the-counter opioid medication. As her sister said, the drugs she was addicted to are legal and easy to obtain. She says she was buying them from chemists throughout the county and further, and recently she started accessing them online from pharmacies across Ireland. She said these purchases are unregulated and make it easy for addicts to access opioid medicines. There's a lot more there, Taoiseach, and it's a sad email. But the core of this is that her family have decided to be quite candid about her death because, as her sister said, if there is to be any sense out of her loss, it would be the prevention of any other family going through this. So, Taoiseach, in that context, I am asking, would your government consider two things: reviewing the legislation, the regulation around the sale of over-the-counter painkillers containing codeine, and also look at the whole issue of pain management, because it's not just enough to put regulation in place. We also have to help people deal with the issue of pain and chronic pain, which is a very significant concern for people all over the country. And Taoiseach, I can guarantee you there are people sitting here in this chamber today who actually know what that is. So it is a big issue, Deputy. And I would like a considered response from you.
Taoiseach.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Deputy. And I will discuss this with Minister Fian and Minister Donnelly and provide you with a more considered response a little bit later on. But just to say, I had a chance to read the article in the Sligo Champion about Laura Newell and her family. I want to start by expressing my condolences to the family on Laura's loss, to her two daughters, aged 18 and 15, who have been left behind, and also to express my thanks to the Newell family for being willing to talk about this issue, because we don't talk enough about the issue of prescription drug addiction in Ireland, and it is a very real problem. And it's very sad to see that she started taking painkillers because her endometriosis was not diagnosed, and endometriosis is frequently not diagnosed, which is a real shame, because once diagnosed it can be treated and treated very successfully. And unfortunately that didn't happen in her case. I think her story tells us something that all of us know, which is that addiction can happen to anyone. It can happen to anyone from any background or any walk of life, and it's really important that we recognise that people who suffer from addiction need help. They shouldn't be stigmatised, they shouldn't be criminalised, and they also need to be reassured that if they seek help, their medication won't be taken away from them, or they will at least be given
Yeah.
an alternative, and that's really important. Prescription drugs are a hidden addiction a lot of the time in Ireland. Sometimes it's codeine, sometimes it's benzos, sometimes it's other drugs. And I had the opportunity over the last couple of weeks to watch Dope Sick. I'm not sure if people have seen that. It's about the OxyContin prescription drug dose epidemic in America. It's a different jurisdiction, it's a different drug, it's a different system, but it does give you a real insight into the problems that any country could have with prescription drugs where they're not properly regulated and where they're easily abused. And it's based on a book, Empire of Pain, which I haven't read yet, but it's on my reading list, but it's based on that. Just in relation to codeine specifically, because of its potential for misuse, it's a controlled drug under the Misuse of Drugs Act 77 to 84. Some low-dose preparations are currently available without prescription and are most commonly used in combination with other analgesics like paracetamol or ibuprofen for pain relief, and less frequently as a single ingredient used as a cough suppressant. Low-dose preparations such as these are regulated as a Schedule 5 controlled drugs. At the moment, these products can only be sold in pharmacies under the personal supervision of a pharmacist and are not available for self-selection. The maximum dose of codeine in a non-prescription product is limited and is limited per the medical products regulations, and the maximum daily dose authorised duration of no longer 3 days in pack sizes is a limit as well. So codeine was a medicine that was very easily available over the counter in the past. It is more tightly regulated. Somebody going into a pharmacy looking for codeine, looking for Zalpidine, looking for Nurofen Plus, can't just buy it. They will be asked questions by the pharmacist, but perhaps that's not enough. And I think it's something that the HPRA will want to give further examination to.
Thank you, Tánaiste. And we all sympathise deeply with the family of Laura Newell. But the purpose of this discussion is what can be done about it? How can we prevent this happening again? And her sister talks to me about what happened in Australia. They banned over-the-counter painkiller medication in 2018. And it has worked for them. It hasn't caused many of the problems that they thought it would cause. What I would like to hear, if not today, but certainly very soon, is that your government will consider this issue, examine it, and look at the possibility of doing that. Also, when I was in the European Parliament, I chaired the pain group, and we were involved with the WHO in ensuring for the first time 2 years ago that pain was seen as a disease in its own right, as distinct from a symptom of another disease. And one of the issues we face here, Tánaiste, is that pain management is woefully under-resourced in this country. So it's a two-pronged approach that's needed. And I would hope that you can give me at least some positive indication now that you will consider that.
Thank you, Deputy Harkin. Tánaiste.
Thanks, thanks very much, Deputy. I'll have to double-check with the Minister for Health and Minister Feehan as to exactly what the legal position on this is. There are two regulators, as you know. There's the pharmacy regulator, the PSI, which regulates pharmacists, and is responsible for making sure that pharmacists don't hand out these medicines too easily. And also, we have the Health Products Regulatory Authority, which is responsible for the regulation of medicines, including controlled drugs such as this. So I'm not sure if it is a ministerial or government decision as such, or a regulatory one, but I will check into it and come back to you maybe in a few weeks with something a little bit more solid.
Thank you very much.